welcome back to another episode here on the Inkwell Lounge. I'm your host, Chris, aka Questing for Lore, and in this week's episode, we're doing something a little different, and it's not our usual interview style. So recently, Jared, who you may remember from the Citizens of Lorcana podcast, kicked off a discussion about set champs over on Twitter, X, where he shared some of his own thoughts and experiences about how set champs are seen in the community and where some of the issues might be. I felt like it was an important topic to cover, so I took some time to sit down and talk with him about those thoughts and even talk through some things that could make it better for everyone, even those on the more casual side. Sound interesting? Let's get to it. Well, hey Jared, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Good. I'm glad to have you back. It's been a while. I think the last time I talked to you was back in like 2024 or something like that. Which is kind of crazy. So it's been a
It,
while.
it's
Yeah.
it's truly remarkable that because I had my podcast. I know how difficult it is to churn out a weekly content, but you've been doing it, and I don't think people fully appreciate the amount of work that goes into it. So hats off to you, man.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I really enjoy doing it, and it's great to get to sit down and talk to people like you and talk about what's going on in the community and in the game and everything. There's no shortage of things to talk about. So it's always
And that's what I
always
miss.
something new.
I miss having the conversations with people. So
Yeah.
I was on Benny's podcast last
Mm-hmm.
week, and so I guess here we are. I'm scratching that itch.
Just without all the extra effort, right? You get to have the conversations, you get to
Yes.
hang out with people, but you don't have to edit, which is always nice. So no, it's not that bad. So for people that may not be familiar with you, since unfortunately the Citizens of Lorcana podcast is no longer going, kind of introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, man, it's been over a year since
Crazy.
we podcast. But yeah, my name's Jared. If you've been on Twitter at all, you've probably seen my account. I'm still active there, Citizens of Lorcana. I started talking about this game before it came out, back when we only had 6 cards that were revealed at D23 in 2022, and so I've been following the game ever since. I've ebbed and flowed. Life circumstances made it so that I stopped doing the podcast with James, but I've still been playing the game and still enjoying it.
Nice. And you won a math this time around. Congratulations.
I want to, yeah.
That's awesome.
I And I was this close to having a comeback podcast. James and I recorded one with Kim and
Oh yeah.
Kim Enchanted. And
Hmm.
I had her on because she had gone from a casual to competitor and gotten a mat. And I was like, that is my dream. And you know what? I did it.
There you
So
go.
I Kim should be proud of me. I'm proud of myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's no small feat, and even in some of the smaller ones, it's still like we have I think for our set champs we might have 12 people or something like that. But it's hard. It's not an easy thing, you know. Oh,
Nope. Yep.
but well, and that actually kind of leads in a little bit to kind of why I brought you on and why I wanted to talk to you. I saw a post that you made over on Twitter or X or whatever, and whoever knows what it's called these days. Um, and it's kind of about set champs, right? Now that we finished out the Winter Spell set champ season, you kind of sat down and had some observations about what set champs are, perception, all that kind of stuff. So I've got it up here on the screen. Go ahead and kind of walk me through some of your thoughts and some of the content in it.
Yeah, I wanted to have this conversation. I was hoping for conversation. You know how it is sometimes you post on Twitter or X, and sometimes you're just like you're speaking into a void.
Yep.
So I wasn't sure exactly, what kind of response I would get, but this one did get quite a bit of a response. So, and it was born out of, so like I said, I've been following the game since the beginning,
Hmm.
and I love to see Lorcana succeed. And so in my locals, there was an incident where Um, some of the more casual social players showed up to a set champ, and yes, they had done all the things. They had looked to make sure there wasn't any of the known like super competitive players going. So they showed up, and then the competitive players showed up, and these locals, the casual players, just like walked out because they didn't want to be cannon fodder for the more competitive players. And
Yeah.
it struck me because for me, set championship should be a celebration of the set. Like
Hmm.
that's what it's designed to be, like a culmination. And there's this disconnect between what I think set championship is supposed to be versus what it is. And I'm afraid that if we don't make any changes that um well, you said yourself, you're set champ, you had 12 people there. When we first had our first set championships, it was getting like 30 to 40 people. Now it's down to 12. I mean,
Yeah.
one of ours had 8. So I wanted to have this conversation to see what kind of dialogue people had about set championship.
Hmm. Yeah, it's weird. Like it's definitely in a weird spot, right? Because on one hand, you have so many people that are brand new to the game, brand new to TCGs, and they see,
Mm,
oh, there's this like competitive kind of thing that I can do,
yep.
and they may not be as experienced in the game. You've got a lot of people that, it's not professionally, but it's kind of is, it's a little bit more, little higher level than just the casual players, but um, you've got these people that play and they play like a lot and they play very competitively, and they come in and everybody's kind of smashed together in the same space. And it's like this weird kind of dichotomy between the two where there's not a real good mesh between them. And I think that's kind of
Yeah.
one of the big things. It's like you have some players look at set champs and they're like, yes, it's competitive. It should always be treated as a competitive thing. That's what it's for. And then you have, people more on the casual side that are more like, yeah, I want to compete, but this isn't enjoyable. This is like this is not the level that I'm at.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, that can potentially turn people off. They can
Yeah.
see those people that play a lot, or play constantly, whatever, um, and really are skillful at the game. They see them come in and they're like, nah, I'm out. This is not going to be fun, because the whole point of the game for a lot of the casual players is it's fun, and
Yep.
they want it to
Yep.
be fun. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I I in preparing for this, I prepared like I don't know. I gathered some thoughts that I just want to share with you.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
um, so first of all, I want to start out by saying we were talking about Mike Post. I want to say what it is not. It is not saying that the competitive players are a problem. Like
Yep.
this, the post specifically says that competitive players are not the problem. Like they're playing within the sandbox of set championships that Ravensburger has set forth.
Hmm.
But I've been seeing all this chatter online, like, oh, it's that time of set, like it's that time of the set to start hating on the competitive players,
Yeah, I saw that
which
one.
leads me to, yeah, which leads me to believe that either they didn't read the post and they're assuming what was said, or they're just misrepresenting it. So again, let me just state explicitly that competitive players did nothing wrong in that scenario where the casual players walked out. And then there were comments that the comments were mostly helpful, and I know we're going to go through and digest some of them.
Hmm.
However, there were some that we inevitably got. They're like, oh, they need to get good, or insinuated that said champs is no place for casual players. And for me, those comments right there kind of underscores the point that I was trying to make. There's a disconnect between what Ravensburger wants set championships to be in practice versus reality. And I was telling you this earlier. When a new company starts a TCG, and the example I was thinking about was Battle Spirit Saga,
Hmm.
they usually like launch their game. They're hoping to get a piece of the TCG player pie, because a lot of people think, everybody who's going to play TCGs is going to play TCGs, and so they just got to get their slice of the pie.
Yep.
But I think what Ravensburger did was actually pretty audacious because they were. They're like, you guys can have your pie. We're not going to do the $1 million prize pool. We're not going to do, whatever. They're like, we're going to go after a completely different segment of players. And you know what? Like, it worked. You just said, like, this is my first TCG. I believe this is your first TCG.
Yep, it is.
And I've talked to countless people who said that this is their first TCG. Um, and I'm sure you share a similar characteristic with most of us. A lot of us are Disney adults. And families. So
Was the shirt a giveaway or
and all the stuff in the background.
yeah, and all
Um,
that, yeah.
but what are things that Disney adults and family they like to have fun and they like to collect things. So Lorcana, in theory, checks both of those boxes. Like it's great at collecting. They always have all sorts of collectibles. I just got this, Stitch playbook, or collector's book, and it's fun. And I
Hmm.
think we're at this point in the game where most people, when they go to their weekly store, league, they're having fun. Like they're going, they're playing, win or lose, they're having fun. But when set champs comes around, that reverses it on its head because all of a sudden it dangles this playmat and this shiny foily card, and it triggers that collector's brain.
Yep.
And then it switches from being fun because instead of hanging out with the people that you always hang out with, all of a sudden you're trying to beat all of them, and then all these, I call them in the post jersey players show up, you know, trying to get the same thing.
Hmm.
So, like I said, my set champs have gone from 20 to 30 people down to like 12. And I think on Twitter, Cole from Quest with Cole said that he was going to commentate a set championship, but he had to end up playing because they didn't have enough people to fire it off. And
Yep.
so, to get to the point, the Jersey players aren't doing anything wrong, but at the same time, if the casual players stop playing, then there won't be any set championships to compete in. And that's the conversation that I was hoping to have.
Yep. Yeah,
All right, I'm
definitely.
off my soapbox.
No, no, it's great. I appreciate you. Like I said, I appreciate you putting that post out there, and I know this is something that kind of comes up every once in a while, and I think you're right. It is some kind of a disconnect between like what set champs is and what Ravensburger kind of wants it to be or kind of thinks it is. I know they're not clueless. They they know what it's like. They go to set champs themselves, so
Yep.
it's not like they're not seeing these things. Um, but it is definitely something like there's that. It's just not quite meshing with the different halves of the community, I guess, and the players in the game.
But if that's the case, that Ravensburger knows that there's this disconnect, then that is maybe even a little more troublesome. I mean, because if they know there's a disconnect and there's not anything happening, then what are we doing here? But that's
Yeah.
what we're doing here.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, and it's I mean, honestly, we could be, talking about this and in, two sets or even another set after Wilds Unknown, Attack of the Vine or something, they could come out and say, "Oh, hey, for the casual side, we're going to go ahead and do this
Yep.
stuff."
Yep.
And introduce pricing for that or something. Who knows, but
And
as
I
it
and I
stands
think
right now, yeah.
and I think at some point we're going to talk about potential solutions
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or ideas.
or ideas.
I will not say they are solutions because it's a complicated problem, right? This
It
is
is.
not something that you can just, wipe it and say, okay, now from now on, we are going to make sure that the casual folks feel accepted at set champs. It's like, okay, but then you make adjustments for that. And then the competitive players lose something, It's like,
Yeah,
no,
you
you
you need
can't.
both.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you absolutely do. And the problem is really that I think one of the problems is that there is just such a large group of casual players for this game. Now, granted, there are a lot of competitive people too. You go to any of the DLCs and you see, the ones that sell out, in 30 seconds or whatever with 2,500 tickets or something. There are competitive people out there that are playing this game, but there is also a really, really large casual community. And they are, They range all the way from people that are just, they're just playing to have fun because they enjoy the game, they enjoy hanging out, and then you kind of move up the spectrum a little bit. You get
Hmm.
the casual players, like we were talking about Enchanted Kim. The casual, or the people that start out on the casual side and slowly work to improve to be able to handle those competitive players, and be able to actually hold their own, and even go so far as to end up winning mats and stuff. So it's weird because there's this huge spectrum, and just saying, set champs is a competitive event, that's how it should always be, is not. I don't feel like that's the line that needs to be drawn for this to kind of work out. So
Well, yeah, to underscore your point, organized play on the national level and international level is doing just fine. Like you say,
mhm.
it's completely selling out. But in my experience, in your experience, and probably in the experience of everybody else listening to this, their set championships have probably gone from 20, 30 people to 16, 12,
Mhm.
8, you know? And I, that's what I want to see remedied because I feel like set championships fills a special role within organized play because it gives those casual players the opportunity to compete at a more competitive level. But it also gives those competitive players, maybe they can't fly all around the world and go to every DLC or
Yep.
every CCQ. So it gives them a chance to flex their muscles, show off their skills from the decks that they've been practicing all set long. And I just feel like there's got to be a better way to service both crowds.
Yep. Yep. Well, so I do want to look at some of the responses to your. Let's see. I'm gonna have to
Heck
try to
yeah.
do this on the fly. So let's see. Um, so we get all sorts of people, like one of the things that we were saying. Some people are like, yes, it's a card or it's a game. It's competitive by nature. So set champs should always be treated as a competitive event. Again, I don't know if that's so. Yeah, so it's tricky, right? So I think that there is an aspect of set champs that, yes, the competitive event, the competitive side of it is important. You don't want to lose any of that kind of thing. But you also want to make sure that that's not the only focus, that it's only towards the competitive players, and then potentially alienating a whole bunch of the player population. Um, there's a lot of people that get into this game, like you were saying, just because they're Disney fans and they enjoy it. And some of them don't even want to compete in set champs, which is a whole different kind of thing. But having something where you just draw the line and say, no, it's only competitive, and that's exactly how it should be treated. I don't
Yeah,
feel like that's the solution for this kind of thing.
there's a Goldilocks zone that we're
Hmm.
going for here.
Yep.
So, do you want me to read this tweet?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, this comes from NVR Terrace. I think we have to stop treating 1v1 card games as anything other than competitive experiences meant to create a sole winner and loser. True, I would hand these players commander decks and tell them to play on the kitchen table where they'll be infinitely more happy. But the thing is they're happy coming out and playing. Like
Yep.
they want to come out and be with their friends and they want to collect the shiny cardboard and potentially even a mat. So I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to be infinitely more happy at a kitchen table. Maybe they would be, but you know what? Some people that's their socialization. Like they go
Yeah.
out and they go to their local game store and once a week they're playing cards.
Yep. Yeah, it's and actually, honestly, this brings up an interesting point as well. I know it was kind of in this particular post, it was a little dismissive the way that it was phrased, um, but and I had it in another one, and I don't remember which one that was. Ah, there it was. Okay, so one of the other comments was like, oh no, I apologize. I know how to use a computer. For those listening on the audio side, I highly recommend you go over to watch the video of this so that you can see me floundering around. Haha,
Oh,
floundering.
flounder.
Worked it in. All right. So then we have stuff like this from Dad Lore that, that kind of reinforces the idea that, we're all here to play this game that we love. That this is not something that, you have to be competitive at, right? But if you are that competitive player, it feels like it's more in the spirit of the game to help the people. Like he says, a rising tide lifts all boats. So that if you are the person that constantly goes to set champs and constantly wins, don't just walk out of the room. Maybe sit down with somebody that you just played or somebody that you played early on and they struggled and you can tell, that they struggled. Sit down with them. Help them walk through their deck, walk through their lines, because that kind of thing is what's really going to grow the community even more. The knowledge sharing between the people that really put the time in and really are the hard competitive players, sharing all that knowledge with the people that are just starting out, to kind of
Yeah.
potentially boost them a little bit in that competitive side of things, so that maybe next time they go to a set champs, it's not as defeating as it could have been in the past.
Yeah. So I think, just to read this post for those who are listening, Davlor says, I think it's a responsibility that experienced players have to mentor the newer players. There's levels to this, and trying to learn on your own is not fun. I brought about 5 people into the game and tried to teach them everything I've learned. Rising tide lifts all boats. And I will say, to cut back to my own experience, not only was that my first like mat that I won for the set championships, it's also the first time I've been to a top cut. And so one of the
Hmm.
local players, his name is Paul. He like he took me under his wing and he's like, hey, because so it was 4 rounds and we met each other in the fourth round. And he's like, hey, if we intentionally draw, then we'll get the 1-2 spot. I was like, okay, because I don't have any experience with intentional draws.
Hmm.
Um, and it did. Like it turned out I got first place, he got second. And then through the top four, he was like, um, so when we got to the top cut, he's like, okay, here's what you should do because we talked about splitting the prizes, and that's what we ended up doing.
Hmm.
I took the mat and he took the box, so
Okay.
that's how I got first place. But if he hadn't been there, I wouldn't have known that that was normal. Like I wouldn't have known that was something that people normally do. So, to Dad Lore's point about mentoring, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and I totally get he's got a reply here where, they say the casual players don't want the help, they want to show up, play, get a pack, and go home in 3 hours. Cool. I mean, that's kind of league kind of things. But I guarantee that, if you approach some of these casual players and say, hey, are you looking to get more competitive? Not just like sit down and say, hey, you don't know how to play your deck. Let me show you. It depends on the approach, is basically what I'm saying. Um, but if you sit down, I guarantee that a lot of these players, especially new ones, if you really sit down and really listen to them and really help them understand the lines and the cards and how they interact with each other and and really work at that, I feel like a lot of people would be pretty receptive to that. Now, there's always going to be that little, or that slice of people that are like, now I'll figure it out on my own, kind of folks. But that's just people. There's always different kinds of people. So,
Yeah, nobody likes to lose. Like
no.
they might just be too scared to ask for help.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Yeah, and I think as speaking of someone, like we said, the first TCG for both of us, as someone who hasn't ever like played this kind of stuff before, having somebody to sit down with, or even just to be able to, DM or hit up on Discord or something, to be able to just ask them questions and say, hey, I saw this card, I thought it would be good, but everybody's saying it's not, but I don't understand why. That's a very, very common kind of question that people new to these games have. And to be able to
Yeah.
have somebody with that wealth of experience behind them to be able to say, well, actually, here, let me show you, and then you get to kind of you get to a point where you can kind of make those judgment calls yourself. So then you can become the person that, that kind of helps to mentor other people as well. And you kind of keep that cycle going. I just think, I think it would be good to, I don't think we need to go so far as to have like a formal, mentorship kind of thing. But I
No.
think it's good in kind of the Disney spirit of it all to be like open and sharing and, understanding for people. And I don't know, maybe that's just me, my little, pie in the sky kind of, kind of viewpoint. But
Well, it goes back to the end of his post. A rising tide lifts all boats. If the casual players get better, then that means the competitive players are going to be able to hone their skills against better players. Like, it's a win-win for everybody.
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. And I know there's a time and place for it. Obviously, at set champs is probably not the best place to sit down and do this kind of
No,
thing.
no,
But if you have, these same the highly competitive players that come to the set champs, if they're showing up at the leagues, there's no reason why they can't sit down during those times. Maybe it's that somebody says, "Hey, I want to play this deck at set champs. What's the best, approach? What do I need to learn about it? How do I need to what do I need to understand about it?" And then having that bubble, that space where they can sit down and do that and feel comfortable about it because it's league, because they're, among friends and it's not a super competitive atmosphere, you know?
yeah, yep. League is not that deep. Um,
Yeah.
the amount of times I'm playing with an opponent and they make a move and I'm like, are you sure that's the move you want to make? Because it's not the ideal line.
Yep.
Like, I'm not somebody that's gonna be like, no, you played it. You're now in a more competitive setting, sure, but at league, it's it's not that deep,
Oh yeah.
as the kids
Yeah.
say.
Well, and you also get, because our set champs they're competitive. They're not like, super highly competitive kind of things, because they're not like big events. It's just, everybody shows up at the LGS and we play for set champs versus for league. But there's still people that are nice and understanding, and they're like, somebody will misplay, and they're like, oh, and they'll still allow them, even though it's set champs, still allow them to take it back. And so it just varies wildly between, you have the people that are just like, no, you can't ever take it back, and then you have some people that are like, okay, this one time, yeah, sure, you know. So just different perspectives, different areas, different people. I think that's probably one of the biggest points of this is that there's never going to be like an easy, simple solution when you're dealing with people, just
Nope.
because there's so much variety. Everybody has different intentions for what they want to do, and it changes constantly. You'll get people that are like, yeah, I want to learn to be competitive and go and play in set champs and win a mat and everything. And then maybe they go and they play a couple of rounds and they're like, yeah, this isn't really what I thought it was going to be.
Yep.
And then they go
Yep.
back to, they'll go play league or they'll go play with friends or whatever and still be happy, still enjoy the game. But sometimes you have to try, you have to make that effort, and then you can realize what you really want, what you're shooting for. So there were some other people that kind of suggested some varying level kind of things. Like, right now we have set champs that's more targeted towards the competitive side. You know, some people suggested, like Martin Carpier, of having mid-level tournaments between set champs and DLCs and league, regional qualifiers, all those kinds of things, so that it's not just this one shot kind of thing, right? It's not just set champs for these people. Um,
So here's my thought on this, and Lorcana is still a pretty relatively young game compared to Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh! But 100%, this is the way to go. We talk about, I mean, they have the CCQs now,
mhm.
but again, the DLCs sell out in a matter of minutes.
Yep.
CCQs, like I don't think the Vegas one even sold out completely.
Oh, did it not?
Um,
I thought it did. Huh.
there's it only had 75 people there. So unless they had a small
Really?
cap.
Hmm.
Um, but there's a difference. There's just a difference between organized play put on by Ravensburger and third party. And I'm not trying to put down the third party because they provide a valuable outlet for the competitive players. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But for the casual person who wants to make the jump to more competitive play, there's just something about official organized play that hits different.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, and I think if that was something that and honestly, this is something that I could see, like you were saying, for these games that have been around longer, they do have multiple level kind of things, that you can kind of work towards a competitive kind of, event or something. But I think, because Lorcana is so early on, maybe that's just something that we haven't grown into yet. Maybe that's something that they're like, we want to offer the high level competitive thing. We want to offer the casual stuff. We're going to figure out in between as we go along, which, I guess kind of makes sense. You don't want to like overcompensate and create this whole structure of, organized play events that kind of feed into each other. And then all of a sudden, everybody's like, well, that's just too much. I just want to play the game, and then it's not successful, right?
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I'm all in favor of Martin's idea. I
Yeah.
think it should have been done like yesterday. A feeder system. But we have to work with what we've been given here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And then they've made changes, as these things have gone along. I mean, I remember for a long time when I first started playing the game, people were like, well, when are we going to get high level competitive events? And then we got them. And now they're like, okay, now, but we need something else, in between.
This
And
is true. It's never enough.
no, no, it absolutely is not. And I think having other more mature TCGs out there that do have those mature structures, and more, more advanced organized play systems, it doesn't help because then you've got a lot of the people that are coming over from that and they're like, well, I have set champs and CCQs and DLCs, and that's kind of it, and the CCQs and stuff aren't even official events. I mean, now they've got, where you can get the ticket to, to nationals, um, but yeah, I mean, before that, it's just like, okay, what else is there?
But
So
even that, like, I'm getting it on another soapbox here, but even with the CCQ, first place gets the ticket to nationals, which is huge, absolutely. But price support for CCQs, some are great, some are fantastic, but most are not. Like,
yeah,
you have to pay, like the one here in Vegas was at the Level Up Expo. You had to pay $60, $70 a ticket just to get in, and then you had to buy the CCQ ticket on top of that. And what do you get for pricing? Like I said, first, but what I'm saying, if they're not going to do this mid-level regional stuff, they should have better price support, like better official price support for the CCQs.
yeah, yeah, and I think. I want to, again, pie in the sky kind of thing, but, I want to think that that's something that they're going to be working on, coming, like coming soon. You
And
know,
just roll the printers a couple more minutes
I
each set,
know.
and you'll have enough promos.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. Um, but I mean, I know I get that it's hard, especially with a global game like Lorcana is. If this was just something that was only in a North America market, it might have been easier for them to just like move a whole lot faster on
That's
this
fair.
stuff.
That's fair.
Um, but I
Chris,
mean,
you're bringing me back down here.
I
Thanks.
well, I know. I gotta balance it a little bit, is what it is.
You're like knocking the soapbox out from underneath of me, bringing me back down. You're absolutely right. It's got to be hard juggling the demands of growing a global competitive scene.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, And and then you have the like the division between North America and Europe, and and then in was it the Japan DLC that they played best of one for everything,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is just wild to me. I mean, but and so you've got all these different kinds of things going on, and it can be hard to try to figure out, I'm sure for them to try to kind of correlate and figure out, okay, this worked over here, but it's not going to work over here. So that means we need to compensate for that and do this. And, there's a lot of moving pieces is all I'm saying. So,
What I hear you saying is they can make it a lot simpler.
they probably could, honestly. I think, there's a lot of things that it seems like there are differences between, like even how the organized play stuff is run between the different regions. You'll have not just like the event itself, where, over in Europe they would get like the illuminary, with the pillars and the book and everything. And now in Richmond we got a book. It's, I mean, little stuff like that. You see the differences that way, but then the actual event is run slightly differently. And so I don't know. I think there's room for improvement on some of this stuff, but I also know that there's only there's only so much money to go around. And I know that Lorcana is popular enough to where they are definitely making quite a bit of money off of it. I mean, shiny cardboard that they're printing on, and selling for. I mean, you've got excuse me, you've got cards that are selling for, thousands of dollars, especially the ones that have been certified and everything. So there's no hurting for for people to buy these things. So, but I also understand that again with the global game and the fact that they have to balance the needs of the players and the wants of the players, what's best for the growth of the game. And so there's just all these things that you kind of have to think that they're having to deal with, besides just making a good game, and a fun game. That's kind of the core, obviously, but there's all this other stuff that comes around it, which includes set champs, includes CCQs and DLCs and all that. So.
Yep. You are not wrong.
And so we had somebody, this is Mark Levy. He actually put together kind of a proposal on his side for some of the things that he thought could potentially help the situation. He played Pokemon, he played Lorcana and Ripbound, and and he kind of went through here and talked about the different levels of people. You've got the casual, the competitor, the collector, kind of the same three groups that we've been talking about a little bit. But then he kind of goes into a little bit more of a structure around like going to locals earns you points, or you get special packs for certain things, and basically falling back on kind of the incentive aspect to like really keep people interested on the casual side, as well as the people on the competitive side, to kind of bridge that gap.
Let me just say before you move on, this is exactly what the DLCs do. Anybody who's been to a DLC, when you go and play, even uh, so for every win you get tickets,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yep.
whether you get top cut or not, it doesn't matter. For every win you get a certain amount of tickets, and then at the end of the event you can take those tickets to the prize wall and you can get promo cards. And for me, that is like the most obvious solution to the set champs. And as Mark Levy just pointed out here, I thought I had an original idea when I thought about this, but I see now Mark must have planted the seed in my brain. But yeah, you show up to set championship, and he said, just showing up gets you these points. But I was saying, like, for every round you compete, that way it incentivizes the
Mm-hmm.
casual players to stay.
Yeah.
And then those points get accrued to your Play Hub account, and then those points you can use to redeem for promos online. Like maybe you could get the Lorcana hat, or you can get a non-foil version of an Enchanted or something like that. Something that makes the Disney collector brain go, "Hey, there's value in me staying here. If I stay here, I can get enough points to get a Lorcana shirt."
Yep. Well, and that's the tricky thing too, right? Because set champs, like getting the mat, getting the, the card and everything is about winning as much as possible, right? It's about whether you win or lose. But something that incentivizes them to, just stick around, just play the game,
To
that
stay
kind
and
of
play.
thing. Yeah, to
Yes.
stay and play is really, it's kind of a different sort of reward. It's not like, yes, you have to be really good at the game in order to make set champs worthwhile. It's more of like, if you enjoy the game and you want to play the game, then we're going to, reward you for that. And it seems like there would be more people that would appeal to rather than just saying, oh, I'm not good enough. And they see, like you were saying, they see the competitive players come in and they're like, oh, well, I'm just going to lose anyway, so I'm going to leave, you know?
Yeah.
So,
And you know what? Say, because I feel like to make this work, they need something very compelling. Say maybe there is like an enchanted level art, and you
mhm,
have to get a certain amount of points. But that would compel the casual players to not go to just one set championship. They're going to go to as many as they need to get as many points as it takes to get that promo card. Like you know what happened because so then you're growing the set championships again. And
mhm,
for me, I'm just like that's it. But I also
yeah.
like his idea of the set champ promo pack. I
Hmm.
really like that idea too. So good job,
Yeah.
Mark.
And and we're seeing some of the promo pack stuff that they're changing up, in the more recent sets, and so you can tell that they're potentially trying new things, just to see what kind of sticks. And so maybe something like that is going to be something that comes in the future. That can be a part of just being at the set champs and actually getting that promo stuff. And then you don't feel like I paid, my money to go, go to the set champs and I walked away with a pack, a booster or something like that. And it's like I put in, I don't know how long y'all's are, but you put in 3 hours, you put in 4 hours, and then to walk away with nothing but a pack is pretty discouraging. So
Yeah, to
having that
to pay more
supplemental.
money. Yeah, to
Go ahead.
pay more money and spend more time to walk away, like you say, with a pack, maybe.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can completely empathize with why those people walked out of that set championship. I totally get it.
Yep. And so I'm curious, do you think that, like, so obviously that kind of thing is something that Ravensburger would have to do on their side. This is not something that stores could potentially compensate for. I mean, they could, but given that, they have their own budgets, they have their own margins to have to worry about, um, to be able to provide that extra level of pricing, an extra level of support and coordination, um, it can be tricky, right? Especially if you want it to be something that's across stores. If there's one store that's like, oh, hey, we're going to start tracking these points and it's going to add towards this thing. And, it's like, that's cool and all, but then that's just that one store.
Yeah,
So
no,
you would have to have it. Yeah.
the point system would definitely have to be a Ravensburger thing, but I don't see any reason why stores, like if they wanted to grow the set championship, why they couldn't supplement the store that I went to. It was crazy, and I didn't know the prize support they had, but they raffled off Raina Jafar Trove.
Hmm.
They raffled off one of these Stitch binder collections. They raffled off two spots to their pre-release, and then Top Cut. They did a case. Like each player in the top four got a box.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
and there was only
Holy
12
cow.
people there. But again,
It's
the
incredible.
onus the onus should not be on the store to have to do that. I think
Yeah.
that Ravensburger and the thing is that it's not uncommon for other TCGs to have something similar. Like I was telling you, I used to play My Hero Academia, and while this is different, they would they had this thing where you can mail in your empty papers or packets,
Hmm.
and for every wrapper that you sent in, you got a point credited to your account. And then with those points, you could redeem them for promo cards. And
Okay.
they were like the non-foil versions of their promos. But I mean, it's simple. So something like that is doable and I think would be compelling. And I just wish, Chris, that you and I could sit down with somebody from the organized play and have a discussion with them.
I know it. It's good that they're listening. It's good that they're making changes. I appreciate that. But it is frustrating for us players to sit down and be like, yeah, we see this as something that could work in the community, and to put it out there and to hear nothing is really tough. It's hard because we love this game so much and we want it to succeed, and we want people to come and enjoy playing it, and are just trying to figure out the best way to make that happen.
One, to make set champs what is meant to be a celebration of the set, which again, I know I'm getting nostalgic here, and they're probably gonna burst out that meme of the old grandma and the walker. I remember when there used to be 30 people at set champs. Okay, grandma, let's get you to bed. But I'm saying we could bring it back. It could
Yep.
happen. It would just take a little bit of effort and like lean into it. Like if you want set champs to be something that is truly a celebration of the set, lean into it. If you don't, then whatever. We'll just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think honestly, in the meantime, before, without having something extra like that added on top, I think it could go a long way to try to make sure that we're setting the correct expectations for set champs as well. So that it's not people like on the casual side coming and thinking it's going to be more like League, and then potentially having people on the competitive side coming in and thinking, oh, I can just come win and leave, because that destroys like the community feel of things. If you just have, somebody swoop in, win, and then leave and not even, I don't know. It seems
Well,
like, go ahead.
well, listen. So my store that I play at, where we tend to be more casual, we're not
Hmm.
super competitive. But again, I already talked about my buddy Paul. He was like, when this set came out, he's like, we are gonna defend the mat at our store. That was his mantra all season long. We're gonna defend the mat because yeah, people people think that because we're a casual store, they can just come in and get the bounty, right?
Hmm.
But I will say we defended the mat this set. So
Nice.
it wasn't me. It was one of the other locals named Zach. And he took home the mat. But like I will say, even that was kind of fun to rally around that, defend the mat.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. No, that's cool.
but that's the stuff that builds the community. Anyway, why did I go off on that tangent? Yes, when people come in, and this is what I was talking about, the Jersey players, and we all know who they are. They go from store to store, and again, they're playing in the sandbox with which they were um, designed to play in. Like those are the rules as Ravensburger said
Yep.
them. And so one of the other suggestions I've seen people talk about, and I don't know how I feel about this, but they said limiting the amount of mats a player can get each set, and you could
Mm-hmm.
probably tie that to their play hub. They could probably put a little icon when a person registers. Like when a person wins a set championship, they could probably put a little icon. And you know what? Yeah, that's another reward for competitive players. When you win in set champs, you can get an icon in Ravensburger Play Hub that shows you were a set 12 champ.
Mm-hmm.
And once that icon shows up, then the store knows, okay, this person took first. So if they win, then the mat gets passed down to the next person.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see that. That's actually a good point. I think there's a lot more that can be done on the Play Hub to kind of lean into, I guess, for lack of a better term, the gamification of the game. To be able to have those special little things, like the credits you were talking about, or the special icons on the profile, or, something like that, to where it's a little bit more of a, like I guess a dopamine hit kind of thing for,
Absolutely.
for people. It's like, oh yeah, I've got, I was set champ for, the last four sets. Take a look at my profile, and, people love sharing that kind of stuff. And it makes them feel good because they can be seen, and, people can understand they've put in that hard work and they've gotten to that point, to be able to see that, and it's the same thing on the casual side. If you've got that point based system or whatever, the credits, and you can get one of the hats after a while, and people are like, oh, did you get that at DLC? They're like, no, no, I earned the points by going to league and trying to play in a set champs, and
That's what
and
I'm
so
talking
then you
about.
kind of start building it up on that side. And I understand there's a whole infrastructure that goes along with that as well, but it seems like that would potentially be an easier change than the actual organized play changes, to how the events happen and how the pricing is, changing that kind of stuff up. It seems like that might be a little bit easier, like a quicker win kind of thing. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I like it. Everything, everything that you just said is like, yeah, that's how it should be. Absolutely.
yeah.
So, if you need somebody to design your organized play, this guy right there.
No,
Oh,
no, don't do that. No. I have the utmost respect for the people that have tried to figure out how to make organized play in this game work. I mean, it's one thing to like, okay, here's the game, here's the rules, here's how we're gonna, run league and all that. But to have these, even just the competitive events that we have right now, trying to figure out the coordination between the events, the structure of the prizing, like at the prize walls and everything. I'm sure there's people that do like, it's like, okay, so we're going to only offer two of these special mats at this one. And then at one of the ones in Europe, we're going to have different mats. And it's like, how do they figure that stuff out? There's got to be somebody sitting down, working through this stuff and putting in the hours so that we can enjoy it, it's, it's really easy to forget that there's somebody sitting at a desk somewhere or, in front of a computer that's like focusing on how they can make things better for us, the players. And so, I appreciate those people. I just have to say, I am absolutely not knocking the current state of organized play or anything. I get it's a tough job.
yeah. No, uh, I'm also not knocking the state of organized play either. Again, the big events go off like they fight. I mean, okay, obviously there are issues with like player integrity or whatever, but the organized play events on the international level and the national level run off very nicely.
Hmm.
But my concern is that set championships is just becoming maybe an afterthought or forgotten.
Yep.
And for a lot of people like me and maybe you that don't fly to every DLC, set championships is the one time where we get to, partake in that competitive spirit at a higher level.
Yep.
That's easily accessible. And I think that there's something important in that. And I think that that's something that really cultivates the next crop of competitive players.
Hmm.
It helps grow the local scene. And I just want it to be something that is truly a celebration of the set. Like, because, yeah. So that's what I have to say there.
No, I love that perspective on it. That it being a celebration of the set. You know that potentially, if you take a look at it that way, makes it more of like an event. And I think that's one of the things that people really like about like the larger events and stuff. It feels like an event, like an experience. you know
Yeah.
and I think there's a lot of the set champs that are out there that you go, you play, and then you're done and that's it. But there's
Yes.
also a lot that I see where they like decorate the store, or somebody brings snacks that are themed to the set, or there's lots of other kind of community focused kinds of things that I think can be done. It's just people taking the time, stores taking the time. It's all about investment, I guess. How
Yeah.
invested do you want to be? If you want your community to grow, your local community, your competitive community locally, you have to put in the work. It's not just going to happen. And some of that, yes, is on Ravensburger, but some of it is on us, the players. We can't just expect magic to happen and all sorts of people come flocking through the doors and say, teach me Lorcana, I want to play, I want to be competitive. You can't expect it to work that way. It just doesn't. You know, and so
Yeah.
I think us putting in that level of effort, even just a little, it doesn't even have to be a lot, can really go a long way to help build these communities and foster these, the up and coming, like you're saying, the up and coming competitive players. You know?
So like, so a couple things. And first of all, I'm not what I just said. I'm not trying to say let's take out the competitive aspect of set championships.
Oh,
100% that should be there.
yeah.
Um, but here's another thing to your point. I didn't know that this was a thing. Did you know at pre-release, Ravensburger has a deal that if a store decorates and sets up, they could have potential to get extra price support.
I
Yeah,
did
I,
not.
I didn't know that either
Huh.
until somebody posted about it. Yeah, like apparently, if your store decorates and they submit photos, then they could potentially win like a case to give away throughout the set. So, I mean, even stuff that they do have like that, people like you and I didn't know about. And we've been
Yeah.
following this game pretty closely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
who
Huh.
knows? Maybe something else is there we just don't know about. But stuff like that can definitely help build the community.
Yep. Well, and I could see them doing that on a, kind of a small trial, right? Just to see, because I mean, if you all of a sudden say, oh, yeah, everybody that decorates gets a case, it's like, oh my gosh, think about how many LGSs there are where Lorcana is played, even just in the US, much
That'd
less,
get out of hand real quick.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah,
An
crazy.
extra
So,
case is unrealistic.
yeah.
But here's the thing, like I said, printing out extra promo cards, not going to take much. And also, yes, I'm going to go there. Second place mats. That was huge. That was huge.
Yep.
Because, yeah, the Jersey players are going to go. But every so often, the casual players are able to slide in and take
Hmm.
that second place mat. Like that was just another opportunity, but taking that away just makes that even much more of a premium item. So
Yep.
I'm going to be a proponent of bringing back the second place mat and and doing some of the suggestions that we listed here. I think that that would create a thriving set championship scene.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Yeah, I think there's lots of possible things that we could potentially do. Again, that we as the players can do, and that the larger we of Ravensburger can do. To really help encourage this stuff. And I think some of it's easy, some of it's hard. Some of it would take a decent amount of money to make it happen. But
Yeah.
I mean, it just depends on the focus, right? If you want the local community level to keep thriving and to keep feeding people up into those competitive events, you have to put some focus on it. You have to be willing to support that kind of thing.
Amen.
You know. Well, hey, Jared, I've had a great time chatting about this. Hopefully, we can, get this out there into the ether and have Ravensburger pick up on it. Maybe. I don't know. I know they've been kind of listening in on some of the conversation that, the Twitter stuff. So, um,
I hear if you say Ryan Miller's name 3 times, he will appear. So Ryan Miller, Ryan Miller, Ryan Miller. Let's see.
no, didn't work this time. Oh no, and I appreciate Ravensburger for all they've done for the game. I
Absolutely.
think overall, there's been a couple of things, but overall their intentions are good. So I look forward to seeing what the next evolution of this kind of stuff looks like. Whether it's specifically just community kind of stuff or if it's related to set champs and organized play. Who knows what the next evolution will look like. So. But yeah, thanks, Jared. I appreciate all the ideas, all the conversation, all the thoughts, and I appreciate you starting all this off. I know, like I said, it kind of comes around a little bit, every set champs it seems like, but I think this time it really like struck a nerve with people, and there's a
It
lot of
really
people that
did.
really, yeah, really shared their thoughts and were really like open about it. They weren't,
Yeah.
guarded with like sometimes to a fault, but but you have all sorts of people in a community, and you just have to kind of roll with the punches and understand that different people have different perspectives.
Yep. And I would say for the most part the discourse was very constructive. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yep. Yeah. So if y'all haven't checked out Jared's post, I will link it in the show notes so that you can have a look at that. There's a lot more responses than the handful that we went through here. There's also a lot of other responses from other community members that kind of, went off on the same subject just on their own posts and didn't reply to Jared's post. So I'll try to find some of those and link to those as well. But yeah, we'd love to hear your ideas. If you thought any of this was a good idea, any of these ideas would, potentially help in your local scene, love to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. Shoot us. We're both on Twitter like all the time. And so, you can find us over there and share your thoughts on that platform as well. But I think with a few changes, I think that we can really make, the community level, the league level, the set champs level, and all the way up really a nicer experience for the whole of the Lorcana player population and not just, focused in on one side of things. So. Yeah. Thanks, Jared. And we'll see you around the community.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was always a pleasure to chat with you, and I appreciate the work that you do.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. Well, I had a great time getting to chat with Jared about some of this recent community conversations and, about set champs and local leagues and organized play in Disney Lorcana and all sorts of interesting things. I hope you enjoyed listening too, and if you like the show, make sure to subscribe, rate, or like the show on your platform of choice. If you'd like to reach out to the show, you can find us on all the socials at Inkwell Lounge, or you can find a full list of links at inkwelllounge.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.